So let's go ahead without further ado and let's get started. I'm going to let our hosts for the day introduce themselves. They're two phenomenal humans, and we're happy to be partners with their organization. So you are here to talk about incorporating computer literacy across K-12, and we know that that's a huge topic right now, so we can't appreciate this enough. So it's over to you, Jennifer and Julia.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for the warm welcome, and thank you for having us. Real quick, who's going to drive the slides? Julia?
I will drive.
Awesome, great. All right, so in case you don't know me, I do see a few names on the screen that look familiar. My name is Jennifer Ehehalt. I'm the Senior Regional Manager at Common Sense Education. Do we have any Common Sense fans out there? Let us know if you know about Common Sense. If you don't, we are a K-12 digital citizenship internet safety curriculum. And so I'm here today to work with Julia around how some of our content can fit with the CS standard alignment. So I think, sit back, relax. I know it's the end of the school year, but you can bookmark and create a little list of back to school information as we talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. So excited to be here. Julia, do you want to introduce yourself before we get started?
Absolutely. So my name is Julia Flores, or Julia Flores if you're my mom. And I am the co-founder and principal consultant at CS for Success. At CS for Success, we aim to create a more equitable and inclusive landscape for elementary school and high school computer science education. And we want to see a world in which their students are having the chance to pursue beginning and intermediate and advanced level coursework and engaging in that hands-on training and understanding how that applies to the real world. So to do this, we're partnering with organizations like Common Sense Education and like IDEA to be able to bring what we have to the masses, if you will. So I've been in education for almost 20 years, and that journey has started in CS as a CS and IT teacher at the high school level that I attended when I was a young adult. And I'd love to say that it was all smooth sailing and that I knocked everything out of the park, but that would be a lie. Because the fact of the matter is that I didn't actually sign up or apply for a CS IT position. I applied for an accounting position, which was a new program that the school was going to start. But when I got there, they said, well, that's not what we need. We need an IT CS teacher. So if you want the job, that's the job. I said, oh my goodness. So I had days to figure out what I was going to teach for 4 different classes at the high school level, starting from intermediate to advanced level IT and CS. So the good news is that I survived and we all learned a great deal. And that today there are so many more resources that are available for teachers looking to get into computer science than there were back then. Back then there was just 3W, if anybody teaches web. 3W was like the holy grail for me because I really didn't know where to even start. And now there are so many different wonderful curricula that are out there. So I'm here to tell you that if you want to do it and you're not an expert in computer science, that is okay. You can absolutely do it and thrive in that space. So let's jump into what we have for today, but we're going to start with a question. So computer science appears to be one of those buzzwords, right, in education. But computer science is actually not a new fad. In fact, what we consider computer science today has been around since roughly 2700 BCE. However, the academic subject wasn't actually developed until 1950 in Cambridge University when they started issuing those diplomas. But since then, since it became a formal subject, we have made monumental strides in this space in that short window. So we can only imagine that if, we've gotten from developing the computer to now having the internet and AI and robots, that where are we going to be in 10 years? Where are we going to be in 15 years? It's probably going to be another giant leap one of those things that we imagine is science fiction might actually be reality in a couple of years. And what's more is that so many industries are affected by computer science in some way, shape, or form, whether that's improving an actual technology that's available or being dominated by computer science. So it doesn't really matter if students don't plan to go down the path of computer science, because what we know is that computers are going to be around for the foreseeable future, and that it can only be of benefit to students to learn how to use a computer and the inner workings of a computer if they plan to be really good at troubleshooting in their position, in whatever position that may be. So the question for us as educators then becomes, what can computer science look like in my classroom? What can computer literacy look like? Well, how can I integrate these computers? Especially now that there are mandates that seem to keep popping up every time we turn around. So I want us to scan the QR code that you see on the screen here, and there's going to be a space for you to ideate, for you to share with your fellow educators and answer the question, what does computer look like for you? What can it look like in your classroom? And let's take about 2 minutes to do that. In fact, I'm gonna do that too.
In case you've just joined while you're working, I just want to make you aware there will be time for questions at the end. However, you can put questions in the chat if you'd like. But at the end, when it does get to that question and answer time, I will stop the recording because we found that people are more comfortable asking questions if they know it's not going to be recorded. There's no shame in that. So at that time, that's also when I'll share out the PDH form if you're interested in your one PDH for attending. So I just wanted to break in really quickly with that because I know we've had some people join in too, and they wouldn't be able to see that message in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It looks like some of the results coming in. It's a thinking process, advancement in society, knowing how to use the computer efficiently and ethically, building capacity to navigate technology, or just a few coming in right now. So thank you for answering, and let's get us the results so you all can see what everyone's putting in there. And in the meantime, we're going to move on so that we can get through some of the content that we have to share with you.
Absolutely. So moving along, what do we have for today? So today we're going to review the state requirements or the mandate or the public act for computing education. Then we're going to talk about how we can address both the computer literacy component and the computer science components of those that legislation. Then we're going to explore some lessons and resources that you can implement throughout the year that can help you address both computer literacy and computer science so that we can stay on the cutting edge of computing education, and we can stay compliant with ISB. Then we're going to talk about parent engagement resources, because that is very, very important. In particular, in the Latino community, I know from personal experience that if my mom isn't on board, neither am I. So it's very important to get parents engaged and to have them understand what computer literacy and computer science is. So that's what we have for today, and let us jump in. So the mandate that governs computing education is Public Act 101-0654, also known as House Bill 2170. And this piece of legislation did 3 things that I want to point out. Now, I did a whole bunch of things, but 3 things that are really important for computing education. And that is that it amends the school code that's concerning computer science courses. It also adopted a new computer science learning standards, or a new set of standards, and it also led to the development of the computer literacy standards. And it includes new requirements for school districts, including a graduation requirement and coursework requirement for both computer literacy and computer science. Now, what does it say? So there were a whole bunch of other mandates in this legislation. What I've noticed when I started diving into these legislations is that they put everything they could possibly think of in there. But for us, and what's pertinent to us today, the computer literacy mandate says the following. It says all school districts shall ensure that students receive developmentally appropriate opportunities to gain computer literacy skills beginning in the elementary school all the way through high school. Then it went on to say that school districts shall submit to the State Board of Education or its designee an annual report that shall include at a minimum information regarding educational technology capacities and policies, device availability for students, infrastructure in the building and access, and professional learning and training opportunities, as well as the schools have to provide documentation of where computer literacy was embedded in the district's curriculum at every single grade level. So it's not if you hit all the third graders, you're fine. You have to have it embedded from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And when I reached out to the state to ask them what was the report look like, where is it, they mentioned to me that that it's going to be submitted in the technology report that's already submitted by every school. So there's that. And you will see that they did put out computer literacy skills, and we could provide you with that document later. Now, it also went on to create a graduation requirement on the high school side. And it states that for pupils entering 9th grade in 2022 to 2023 school year, and each year thereafter, there has to be at least one course in which there is an intensive instruction in computer literacy. So that could be English, it could be social studies, it can be any other subject which may be counted towards the fulfillment of another graduation requirement. One thing that is also in that legislation that I didn't really mention anywhere else is that computer science courses, some of them could be counted as a math. So there's also that. So what does it say about computer science? So the computer literacy was supposed to be started back this school year that's passing through right now, so 2022, 2023. The computer science requirement begins school year 2023 through 2024, so the one that's coming. And it states that the school board of a school district that maintains any grades 9 through 12, so this could also be those lab schools that have a 9th through 10th grade in the earlier years, you must provide an opportunity for high school students to take at least one computer science aligned course aligned to rigorous learning standards of the State Board of Education. So one thing that I will point out is that it says it must provide an opportunity for every high school student to take at least one computer science course. It does not say that all the students have to take it, but the school does have to be prepared and able to offer it. And that's at the high school level.
So Julia,
that's
can
a
you
lot of
meet?
words.
I'm going to pop in a minute. I just want to ask, so for the folks on our call looking at this teaching, since it's not necessarily a class, I didn't know if anybody had any questions in terms of like implementation. So if they do, throw them in the chat so we see where your thinking is, if that's okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like what does it mean? But if anybody has any questions, throw those in the chat so we can see where your mind is. That's great. Thanks.
Absolutely. And if I'm talking too fast, please let me know, because when I get excited, I sure do go, 50 miles an hour. So that was a lot of text to digest. What exactly does that mean for people in elementary school and high school? Well, it means that this past school year, you were required to embed computer literacy, knowledge and skills, because that's what they call it. They don't call it standards, at every level, starting from kindergarten. And you also must submit to your school where you embedded that computer literacy instruction. And in some cases, it's just a matter of highlighting. Like this is where I typically, show students how to access a computer, how to create their passwords, how to use the keyboard itself, how to type. On the high school side, you are also required to provide where you embedded the computer literacy component this past school year. But now they also have that additional component of providing computer science to all students next year. So those are two things that are happening in the high school space and the one thing that's happening in the elementary school space. So at this point, you might be wondering, what is the difference between computer literacy and computer science? And that's okay, because when I started teaching, I didn't know there was a difference. And I actually use those terms interchangeably. So computer literacy teaches students how to use the computer. So computer science teaches students the inner workings of the computer. And I like to use the analogy of the driver and the mechanic, right? So computer literacy is much like driving the car, in that computer literacy deals with using the computer. Computer science is more like being the mechanic or the engineer of that car. So for me, just because I know how to drive it doesn't mean I would know how to take it apart and put it together, which I do not know how to do, but I can't change a tire. So that's why I like to use the graphic on the screen. One is going to drive, the other one needs to be able to use to use the computer as well, but to be able to understand the inner workings and be able to know it more in depth. All right. So, but let's get the official definition on that. So ISBE states that computer literacy is broadly defined as one's knowledge of and ability to use computers and related technologies efficiently and effectively. More specifically, computer literacy includes knowing what constitutes a computer, the uses and applications of computers, and the impacts of computers on society. Computer literacy is, as such, computer literacy is a study of computers and algorithmic processes, which is just a step-by-step detail of the processes. First do this, then do that. Including their principles, their hardware and software designs, the applications, and their impacts on society. The computer science does not include the study of everyday uses of computers and computer applications such as keyboarding or accessing the internet. So that's the difference. Computer literacy isn't necessarily computer science. However, if you do teach computer science, you are likely going to cover computer literacy because students need to be able to understand and use the computer to do computer science. So even though it says it is not, well, it kind of is.
I'm not sure I am.
Oh, there goes technology. So what are the computer science standards? And we're going over the computer science standards and the computer literacy skills and knowledge because I want to show you the overlap. So computer science standards are broken up into concept areas. So computer science is a really big field. It not only encompasses the parts of the computer, so actually how to build the computer itself, how to design the software to make the computer parts work together, but it also covers things like data and data analysis because the computers are designed to take in vast amounts of data and to be able to do something with it for you. But it also covers networks, which is how computers connect to one another, the internet, which is just a ginormous network, and how to develop apps, so things like programming and coding, as well as figuring out what the impacts of all of that is and means to society. So the standards are written by grade bands, so from K through 2, 3 through 5, and the reason they did that is because they know that computer science education is not at the stage where it can be embedded into every single year. So they're at the point where they're telling you at the end of 2nd grade, this is what we hope students have accomplished. At the end of 5th grade, this is where we hope students are, and it goes on in chunks like that. However, If you are, let's say you are in 5th grade and your students have never touched the computer in the way a computer scientist would, then you wouldn't likely start at the 3-5 standards because those may be too advanced for the students. You would likely start at the K-2 standards, which is where that flexibility really helps. Especially if you're jumping in at the 9th grade and the students have never seen all of the standards that are coming before. A lot of introductory level high school courses actually cover a majority of the K-2, 3-5 standards, and they dabble in those 9-10 standards for the same reason that for the most part, our education system isn't to the point where students have been getting a continuous education from K through 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So that is okay to start wherever your students are, wherever you feel comfortable. Because they should be, they're reflected as a continuous education. So this is what the computer science standard progression sheet looks like that you can find on the CSTA's website, and that is the Computer Science Teachers Association website. I like to see it like this because this visually represents the progression from level 1A, which is grades ages 5 through 7, which is grades K through 2, then 3 through 5, 6 through 8. So I can see like, okay, well, if I start my student here and they're going to have computer science next year or in the next band, this is how they should be progressing through their education. It also has it chunked out by the concept areas on the left side. The website for the CSTA, which is csteachers.org, I believe, has quite a bit of information on there to help you use these standards effectively. And we also have these for you in a Google Sheet, which we will talk about later. So I redid it and put it into the K2 and cleared up some of that information on top because that is a lot to look at. So this is how the standards are laid out in the progression chart, and you could find this at csteachers.org/standards. And you're going to notice that the concepts and the subconcepts are on the left, and then the grade bands are across the right. And again, you will see this in a document that we'll be sharing soon. So the computer literacy skills. So these are broken down into 4 concept areas, and they span K through 2. And they are broken up slightly differently in that they address where students should be introduced or beginning with this skill, where they should be developing, and by when this skill should be secured or mastered. And they look very different, but they are also grouped at the top. You'll notice it says basic operation concepts and keyboarding, which is one of their concept areas. And it tells you where it should be introduced, where it should be developing, and where it should be secured and or mastered. So it's more continuous. It doesn't necessarily have to just start here and that's it. Once you got it, you don't have to worry about it. No, they're expecting the teachers to be able to continue to build on those skills. So what is the difference? So we found that when we looked at these standards, there is a pretty significant overlap here. And if you're starting out and you want to meet the mandate and expose students to computer science, you could absolutely do that. So when you see here, this basic operations and concepts in keyboarding does some overlap with computing systems, which is all about how the computer itself operates, how things are working together. Data management and security on the computer literacy side aligns with both data and analysis, which is the concept areas on the computer science side, and networks and the internet. Internet searching and online databases overlaps with data and analysis and networks and the internet. And the multimedia and software applications and collaboration tools leans quite heavily into the impacts in computing. So you can absolutely do both, especially if you're just starting out. So you can have a computer science course or a special and still meet the computer literacy components or vice versa. And we will show you what we've developed for you, because looking at both of these sets of standards can be overwhelming. So what we did was we created a Google Sheet that imported all of those competencies for computer literacy, as you see here. And at the very far side, you'll see CSTA as a header. And we tell you what standard the computer literacy knowledge and skills overlaps with. So if you teach the first one here, the BOCK1, identify the basic components of a computing device, whether a computer, laptop, or a handheld device. That is pretty much the same standard as 1A-CS-02. So you teach one, but you actually can show on your lesson plan that you're teaching both. So we have this one for you. And if you're on the high school side and actually have a high school course, we've also identified it in the other direction. So if you're teaching 1A-CS-01, which is select and operate the appropriate software and perform a variety of tasks, we show you where the overlap is with the computer literacy skills and knowledge, so that you can do both. Are there any questions?
There were a few that popped up. The first one is there a penalty at this point if schools cannot follow through with documentation? Do you know? That's kind of putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
I actually don't know, but that is a very common question. Let me tell you, especially if you're on the high school side, looking to implement, having to implement a computer science course or prepare for it, and let's say you don't have a teacher in your building that has the computer science endorsement, what do? I don't know what the penalty is. However, I can tell you that there are quite a few districts that are trying to figure out how to get around this using the virtual high school and partnering with local community colleges and universities in your area, so that those colleges and universities can offer the computer science course.
Can I jump in really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you.
No, I wish that I had a great answer, but she's right. We've been asked that question a lot, but there's not any really strong answer. So what I've been telling people is, often if you go to your ROE or ISC, they have a direct link to ISB, and they're having frequent updates. Now, that doesn't mean that ISB is always giving them the answers that we're looking for too, but because they have that direct link and they meet frequently, they kind of are that squeaky wheel, right? So I really encourage you, if you are wanting to know, kind of freaking out about it a little bit, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What is our school going to do? That would be my best recommendation for you. Really contact your local ROE or ISC and start kind of asking them and stay on it, because they're going to be right now your best resource for answers. Sorry for jumping in there.
No, I appreciate that. We definitely appreciate that. Thank you. And so, Paul, I hope that kind of answers your question in terms of offering a course catalog or a listing of the class schedule. I think that will be more to come in the coming weeks. So thank you for that. And then if Sarah, there's a question here too. And it says around whether you're using an iPad or a computer, is it different is anything differently, like, is it involved different things, different aspects between the two devices? And I want to say, in my opinion, no, a device is a device because it's still a system of data collection, a system of algorithms, correct? I don't know if Julia, you want to add to that, but I don't think it's about the device necessarily as it is as much the skills to equip you to manage the device in a way that feels
Absolutely.
Good.
That is 100% spot on. If it's a computing device, it counts. And even some of these standards, the one that we see on the screen here under explanation, people using computing devices, it doesn't say computer, because we know that there are a fair amount of districts that are using iPads and other sorts of tablets. And I will say that iPads, even iPads, you can code on an iPad. So there is a fair amount of computing power built into these iPads these days. So you can teach both. And there's even, if you wanted to teach keyboarding, there's even little keyboards that you can buy for the students to use to learn keyboarding. And there's also a pop-up keyboard that comes up as well. So you can do everything that you need to pretty much from an iPad, unless of course you're trying to do the only case where that does not work is if you're trying to do a complete like coding class on the iPad with the Apple curriculum. That Apple curriculum calls for Macs. So actually the Apple curriculum tends to ask for the latest device. So I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah.
And also just to clarify too, coding is just one teeny tiny computer science word, because I just don't want them to get, I feel like coding is computer science when you think about it as the big picture, and it's definitely not. So there's so much more to it than pigeonholing into coding. So let's keep moving, because I think this will come together once they hopefully see some of this information that I'm going to present, you may already be doing. And that's what we want to do next is let's see what you're already doing, and let's make us feel good about what Julia explained so simply, such complex things. But thank you, Julia, because that felt really easy. And a standard to a resource is what we need. Am I right? A standard to a resource. That is how we function. And so Common Sense Education, as you may or may not know, has a K-12 digital citizenship curriculum with lessons, quick activities, all kinds of things from 15-minute entry point things all the way to full-on lessons. And when Julia and I met, we couldn't believe how much digital citizenship skills, dispositions, and habits tied to not only computer literacy and internet safety, but also privacy plays a big role in computer science, believe it or not. And so how many of you, if you could give me a thumbs up, either using the little emoji reactions or in the chat, are currently using or have used Common Sense resources before? I'm just curious to get a checkpoint on if you can use the reaction piece or a thumbs up for me. That's always so helpful. Cool. Okay, so we're sort of a split audience on that. All right, that's okay. Just curious. Thank you, Paul, Leslie. That's awesome. So today, as you can see, we have, this is all free resources as well. And so everything I'm going to show you is free, but we have these 6 different themes that go in through kindergarten through 12th grade at Common Sense. And so you can see we have media balance and well-being, the digital footprint and identity, the cyberbullying, digital drama and hate speech, privacy and security, which we're going to take a deep dive into, and then relationships and communication. And then that last one is news and media literacy. And I'm very excited to see the thumbs up, because I'm hoping once I show you some of these lessons, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I've got a good start on computer science in my classroom. So hopefully we can be clapping here in a little bit. All right, let's take a look at the first lesson. Let's just look at the privacy and security strand. So this happens to be a 4th grade lesson. Again, as Julia mentioned, these things go up and down grade wise. Just because it says it's a 4th grade lesson does not mean you have to start in 4th grade, et cetera, et cetera. So this was one that lined up really great with private and personal information. When we talk about computer science, we talk about the things we share. And so this lesson, grade 4, if you go to the next slide, will kind of give you an outlook on the learning objectives. And so thinking about why we share information in the first place. And, what we know as humans is sharing things makes us feel good, right? We love to share, even at the elementary level, we love to share our Pokemon cards. We love to share what we did over the weekend. We love to share what we ate for dinner, et cetera, the good and the bad, right? But it's in our human selves, our human nature to feel good about sharing things. And that's okay. We just have to make sure our students understand and build habits in what's okay to share and what's not. And so this whole private versus personal information and why it's risky to share everything. And so the lesson goes through vocabulary, different vocabulary words that may pop up that could be new to students, or if you want to go to the next slide, I think we have some vocabulary there. Thank you. This is the video. We don't have to play the video, but a lot of our lessons have these 2 to 3 minute videos. And after sharing that video, you can see there are 2 questions there just for class discussions. So these are really great for morning meeting, that break after lunch, advisory, thinking about these little moments throughout your day, whether elementary or middle or high, on where these can fit in. Next slide. And here's some of the difference between the definitions. So we always have vocabulary that you can cover and go over. There are also student handouts. I think I have a student handout in there as well. You want to go to the next slide? Student. Apologies, the bus has come. Please tell me I'm not alone on that one. So yeah, student handout. So different questions on, classroom discussion. These are great for LMSs, so they can be thrown into an LMS, no matter which LMS you use, for students to answer. Because sometimes some of these conversations are really great as a whole conversation, but sometimes when we talk about things, having students answer anonymously within their own, LMS system where the teacher can see is also helpful. And then the next slide will showcase the next lesson, which is more of a middle school, and this is being aware of what you share. And so this one, the objectives you can see here, the next slide will show us. This one, so one of the things I want to point out with our lessons is it's going to be scaffolded and it's going to get more and more mature as we go on. So at the elementary level, I showed you 4th grade, but really when we talk about computer science, we're talking about creating passwords. How do you create a good password? What is the strategy behind passwords? Then we moved into, okay, now I'm in this platform. Now let's talk about private and personal information. This next step is going to talk about the collection of information. So data collection is another big theme through the computer science standards. Am I right, Julia? And so when we think about data collection, how advertisers collect, what you're giving the advertisers to be able to advertise towards you, no matter which platform you're on or in. And then algorithms. There's also a big piece of the topic around algorithms, and we have an entire high school lesson that can discuss algorithms and what those look like in terms of your privacy. And so this lesson I really like because it really talks about privacy policies. Again, give me a hands up, give me an emotion. How many of you read privacy policies? No one's going to admit or not admit to this, but the long of the short is they are long, right? And they're not always in the best layman's terms for all of us. And so what we want to start to teach kids is, and as adults, tech for adults too. We have to sometimes put our hat on so that we can best model for our students. And so privacy policies, I have to admit, because of my role, common sense, I tend to skim them, but I don't always, read the whole thing. So in all fairness, those of you who admitted it, you're not alone. You're not alone. We are all in this together. But, for example, Snapchat, we talk about any type of social media platform that students are signing up as early as middle school, upper elementary school. It's the privacy policy. And I want to give you the next couple of slides are going to show you, what they look like and how what to ask yourself before you actually give your information away. And so we define cookies and what the importance of cookies are and what it means and how that looks. Like, this is spot on computer science, right? The next vocabulary word is the different settings, So this is all part of that data collection in your settings, in your screen, in your location, because that is the data collection they're using to build out those algorithms. And so we'll keep it simple. Let's go to the next slide. I want to get to the strategy where you can opt out, the privacy settings. Like, this is all important stuff for us to know about as adults and be comfortable with, so that when we're in classrooms with students, if they have questions or if they are involved in signing up for anything, it doesn't always have to be a social media platform. This is for, like, shopping, right? Different websites when you go to buy something, right? You have to go through all of this information, apps in the App Store. And so these are things that we do on the daily basis that we need to make sure our students have those habits as well. So, privacy policy. If you go to the next slide, we're going to show you, I think, the tips. Yeah, you want to go ahead. And this lesson gives us tips for protecting your privacy. So turning off your cookies in your browser settings. And these are all tips you can go through with your students in your classroom. These are things you can hang in your classroom and build a daily habit. This does not have to be a one and done lesson. This is introduce the lesson. This is good stuff for those first 10 days of school. When you're setting up this, like, classroom management thought, and thinking about how you want your students to behave those first 10, 12 days of school, when we get our devices and we're setting things up and we're creating passwords for different purposes. These are all really great things to just have on hand all the time, every day. All right, let's go to the next slide. Keep going. And so this is the strategy I was looking at. It's ask. And so the A stands for assessed, what will be assessed, shared, what will be shared with other people or companies, and known, what could be known about me if I use this. And so these are the things and strategies you can, again, post up in your classroom, have kids refer, have kids explain, review some of them in the moment. If they are signing up for something within the classroom, this is great. What am I going to say? Teachable moments. And then let's go, I think I also included some of the family engagement pieces. The next one, yeah. So we had mentioned earlier about the family engagement. So all of our content and all of our curriculum has a family engagement piece. So whatever grade you teach, whatever lesson or concept you teach, there is a family tip sheet and a family activity that you can share with families to engage them in the conversation, so that it's not something we just do at school and it's not something we just do at home, right? It's something that we do together. And we're talking the same language and using the same language and the same terms, which is really helpful. And so these are easily shared through parent portals of your LMS, wherever you have families and parents going to get information about, grades, whatever messaging you use. These are really great. Lots of school districts use them in newsletters. They post them on the website. So it's all under Creative Commons. So you can take any of these links here and use them throughout the school year. They're also available, all of our content, both curriculum and family engagement information, is also available in Spanish, just in case. All right. So I showed you just 2 quick lessons out of our curriculum for those of you who weren't familiar, but I did want to show you what the lesson topics and titles look like kindergarten through 12th grade under our privacy strand. Because like I mentioned earlier, Julia and I mentioned, or when we went through it, we saw a lot of overlap with this theme. So when you think about the integration, and if there isn't a class, maybe there are teams in each building that lead the computer science implementation. And I think these are really great entry points, especially if you're already teaching this stuff for digital citizenship. You can teach these lessons and check your DigCit box and check your computer science box, which is great, and your computer literacy box, because this is all about equipping our kids with what they need to be, internet safety functioning humans in our, ever so changing, fast technical digital world. So does anybody have any questions? I'm going to pause there. We can throw that privacy strand in the chat. Let me see if I can grab that link for us, just in case you want to see our lessons. Anybody have any thoughts or questions? Here, let's give you that. That'll take you to our lessons at least, and then you can go from there.
So I also wanted to share with you the Google Sheet that I kept on mentioning, and to show you what else we've provided in that document. Let me know if you all can see this screen. I don't know.
Yeah, we can see it.
What do you? Perfect, cool. All right, so on this sheet, you'll notice that there are 4 tabs across the bottom. The one that we talked about, which is computer literacy to the computer science crosswalk, where front and center are the computer literacy standards, and we have the computer science standards tagged on the side. Or if you're looking at it from a high school computer science teacher's lens, where you're doing the class for computer science and you're trying to identify or weave in computer literacy, we have it shown the other way. We have the standards front and center, and then we have the tags on the side. We also provided you with the high school progression, or with the progression. And at the very top, you'll notice that the things that I have different here is that those K through 2 and 3 through 5 standards, I replaced the top with introductory, because that's really what those standards are. And then those 2 standards are more of the intermediate, and then the advanced standards are the 3A, which are the 9 through 10, and the 3B, which are 11 through 12. I also accelerated some of these standards. So what I mean, if you look at the networks and the internet section, you'll notice that 1B is moved to the introductory in the first area. So this is more so of the view from the high school point of view. So if you're in high school, the 1B is absolutely an introductory level standard that a student can access. However, if you have the K through 2 students, I wouldn't introduce 1B in that grade at all, because the idea of abstraction is probably not accessible to them at that age. So I would definitely shift it over. But if you're in high school, this is kind of like the perfect mix that I would show. But the cool one that I really wanted to celebrate here is the last tab, which is Common Sense Education Lessons. So we took the computer literacy standards, or knowledge and skills. We've identified the CSTA skills in this one, and we've tagged which lessons on Common Sense Education's website, the digital citizenship lessons, that address all of those standards. So I hope you all find that of value, because this is, I know as a teacher, this is definitely what I would have been looking for. Like, just tell me which lessons do all of this stuff. These are the ones. So I will also share with you the link to the ISB computer literacy skills and knowledge, because I know we've mentioned it and it's not always easy to find. And I will also include the computer science standards from the ISB point of view right there.
That is a beautiful spreadsheet.
And it's going to look even better over the coming weeks, because we're really at Common Sense trying to tease these out to even being more specific to the privacy lesson itself. And we have more than just lessons too. We have just like turnkey quick videos and resources that we would call them, that are not necessarily like a full-blown 45-minute lesson, but just quick things. But with the time of the webinar, we didn't want to overwhelm you. I think this is just a good start that we exist. And because I'm based in Illinois and obviously work very closely with IDEA and the team, I'm available to work through this in terms of implementing across schools and districts, because I know some of your library media specialists could be using some of this stuff too. So we'd want to double check and make sure we have a creating a culture of all things digital, including internet safety, cybersecurity, computer science. If you want to flush it out, I'm available. Let me know. Happy to work with you in your districts. So appreciate your time today. Thanks, Julia. And then we have just a quick survey, if you wouldn't mind. Feedback is always a gift in my world. Making sure we give you the best delivery of content and information. And then our newsletter. If you don't already sign up for the Common Sense Education newsletter, that's your best way to get all new things, trends, etc. I know our one comes on Tuesdays, and I know our one today was all things AI, which I know is a huge topic. But I know that CS is going to be a huge back to school piece for us. So you'll want to get the newsletter so you can stay on top of all that. And look for us partnering again with CS for Success, because we're working hard together to kind of distribute as much as we can together.